It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome back to the Douglas Coleman Show, Lightnin Charlie. Hey, Charlie, how are you? Welcome back.
Hello, Douglas. Thank you. Good to see. Well, not see you, but good to talk to you again.
We looked it up. You were on in February of 2023, so it's been just a little over a year, I guess. And you've got a new album out called Life. Before we get to your music, though, every time that I go on Facebook and I see a post with you, there's always a Lincoln Continental in the picture.
I need a sponsorship or something, don't I? There's always a stinking Lincoln hanging around, huh?
But I've seen more than one. So, do you own all of these or what?
Yeah, I own two Lincolns. I was a Cadillac guy for years. I had three 1960s Cadillacs.
Nice.
And at one point had all three at the same time. A 62, which was my year. That's the year of my production as well. I'm a 62 model. And I had a 66 Coupe de Ville and a 67 Sedan de Ville. And I woke up one day and realized, I've got these three Cadillacs. It's something like, 80 feet of Cadillac end to end. Yeah. And I realized I'm not the number one draft NBA player in the draft, and I'm not Elvis, and I got to get rid of two of these cars. And so I ended up selling a couple of the Caddies and sold my 67 a couple of years ago and bought a real dream car of mine. It's a 1969 Lincoln Continental Mark III.
Oh, nice.
Which is a really, really fantastic automobile. It's triple black, black body, black top, black leather interior, 50-some thousand original miles on it. It's just immaculate. And then, of course, I've got my Lincoln Limo, which is kind of become like kind of a trademark with me, at least around town locally. It's my daily drive. It's a Lincoln Town Car limousine, a 95. The coach was built in Beverly Hills, and so I don't know who might have ridden. You might have ridden in the back of this limousine back in the 90s.
It's possible.
But yeah, it's been a great car. It's on the cover of my album Life, and is such a billboard, in a business where name recognition is so important, and image and branding and all that stuff is so important, and musicians, will buy T-shirts and print hats and pens and buttons and rent billboards or whatever, but nothing is as powerful of a tool as that limousine is, with my name down the side of it, And I'm a much better singer, let me tell you, getting out of that limousine, even though I'm getting out of the front, than if I rolled up in a Ford Taurus.
You can put a lot of gear in a limousine.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's you got to get a driver, though. If you're going to gigs,
I know, right?
You got to get a driver.
I know, man. Are you available? I got
sure.
I got a limo, but nothing to chauffeur it. That's my line. I can afford a limo, can't afford a driver. I did a TV. I do a local TV. It's kind of a community magazine type of morning show, a daytime show called Daytime Tri-Cities, that I've been on for years, and one of the hosts on that used to say, when I was coming on, in the opening of the show, he would tell his co-host, "Lightnin Charlie's with us today. I saw him pull up in the parking lot, and he pulled up, and he was driving, but he was wearing one of those little chauffeur caps, and he parked the vehicle in front of the TV studio, and he climbed through the back window there, the little panel window behind the driver's seat, climbed into the back, put on his cowboy hat, his Stetson, and got out the back like he was being chauffeured. And I told the host that we should film that I would come and do that, and they could bring some cameras out in the lot and film that it would have been hilarious. But we never got that done, and I don't know that I could still fit through that little pass-through window either, you know?
Well, you know what's very sad
not quite as skinny as I used to be.
About those beautiful cars that they used to make is that there is no more full-size sedans available new. And, you know, there were a few that were sort of remaked. I remember in 1995, Ford put out the T-Bird, which was modeled after the 1950s one, right? And Camaro has done the same thing.
57 Repro.
Yeah. Camaro's done the same thing,
Charger.
And the Charger has done the same thing. Why hasn't GM put out a 76 Caddy Eldorado with, you know, modern amenities in it? I mean, why not?
Yeah, or even a Caprice. Give me a Caprice Classic convertible. I remember driving one of those like a mid-70s, 76.
Yeah.
With white leather seats and just gorgeous boats. And, you know, the suspension of a big car like that is just like, it's like a waterbed on wheels.
Absolutely.
They're just magnificent machines, man. I agree. Let's do that. Or hope that someone else does it, because if somebody wants to repro a 76 Eldorado convertible, I'll buy one.
Oh, I would too. And, you know, there has to be a market for it. I mean, there's enough people in the car show and the car communities that just love the old cars. And I think there would be, you know, and it wouldn't be out of the question to charge, you know, 80, 90 grand for one, and people would buy them.
Well, that's what a new truck costs. Yeah. And,
I know. Isn't that ridiculous?
That styling.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And to have that styling with modern accoutrements, you know, like disc brakes and Bluetooth and airbags,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
And heated steering wheels, you know, sign me up.
I know, it's very sad. It's funny because I'm watching an auction right now. I'm not buying, but I'm watching this one particular car, 1968 Continental sedan, and there's about 8 minutes left. This car is beautiful. It's like a midnight blue, suicide doors.
Wow, and that's Oh, okay. So it's the Mark II, I guess, Continental with the suicide doors.
No, it's just the Continental sedan. It's called. It's not one of the Marks.
Continental sedan.
Yeah, it's a 4-door, but it's the suicide doors.
Mark.
Right.
Gotcha.
460 V8. The thing is absolutely beautiful.
That's mine.
It's getting a little.
What's the price on it right now?
It's up to 28 grand.
A little pricey now.
Yeah, 28 grand, and it just jumped from 25.
You want to split it? You can have it on weekends. Let me have it during the week.
My wife would kill me if I bought something like that.
Yeah, well, don't let her listen to the podcast, and you know what she don't know won't hurt you.
So anyways, let's pivot over to your album. So you got a new album out called Life, and I was reading through this, and it said 4 years in the making. What took you so long? Why did it take 4 years to
I know, right? That's why they call me Lightnin, because I'm not fast, I guess. It's like calling a bald guy curly in my case. But we were faced with some challenges. What happened was we started the record by accident on a family trip to Canada, to Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to visit my wife's brother, Joe, who's a musician, and wanted to take us to this studio that he did some session work at. And he told me, bring a guitar, and he says, you, me, and Beth will go in and cut a few songs for fun. And so he takes us to this, so it was like a Griswold family vacation, and we go into this warehouse, this unmarked warehouse, that this bat cave of recording studios, they were literally filming a movie in around this warehouse. There were people on horseback and women dressed as flappers, and just from the 20s. It was like I thought I went to sleep after eating like a bunch of Thai food or something, and I was having nightmares. But go into the studio, and the engineer directs me to an old mic, and Joe had told me, my brother-in-law had told me that there was a lot of old gear there. And so there's this old RCA mic, and I'm looking at it while I'm unpacking my guitar, and I said to the engineer, I know I've got a picture of Sam Cooke singing into an RCA 44 ribbon mic that looks just like this one. Because as with old cars and things, these vintage pieces of equipment have their own patina and scratches and dents and so forth.
Right.
And the engineer turned around in his chair and said, well, that's because it's that mic. I said, what? He says, Sam Cooke sung in that mic. So did Sinatra. So did Frank. So did Sinatra. So did Elvis. So did Ray Charles. So did Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh, wow.
All of this gear is from Bill Putnam's United Western Recorders on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. That's Ray Charles's Wurlitzer piano right next to you. And I instantly just was paralyzed. I had tears in my eyes, Doug, literally, at the thought of singing through an audio chain that had produced more hit records than any other studio on earth in history. That is United Western. Bill Putnam, who's known as the father of modern recording. He's the guy who invented reverb. He's the guy who invented the console multi-track recorder, which is there. His original board was there in this like Area 51 of recording, has the Holy Grail inside there. And so we cut a few songs that day, and when I heard the playback, I was just, it was the first time in my life I had this sound. I was such a fan of music since I was able to walk, and memorizing records and hearing all these records from that studio and hearing it on TV also, the theme to the Flintstones and Hawaii Five-0 and Sanford and Son and, all United Western. So when I heard a playback for the first time in my life, I heard my voice sound like those records. Now, that's not to say that I was singing like, Aretha or Ella Fitzgerald or Sam Cooke, but the sound was going through the same audio chain that produced those records. And that's, so then of course it's like, well, I got to do an album here. And went back home. This was in July of 2019. And so when I returned home, started doing some recording locally in Tennessee and sending the files up there to Canada to have them go through that audio chain, through his EQs and compressors and things. And things were going along really well until March of 2020 when the world stopped turning.
Okay.
And everything came to a halt, including this album. And it became a really challenging time to try to cut an album in another country, particularly Canada, which was so strict. Their quarantine lasted for about 2 years, where folks in Canada were not allowed outside of the house to congregate in a room with a single other person for 2 years. And I guess there were exemptions to that sort of thing. I'm sure the politicians exempted themselves from that kind of a incarceration, but that didn't extend to recording studios. And so we were so challenged by having to work around COVID and the shutdown and the quarantine for about 2 years. And what we ended up with was almost 2 albums worth of material, of finished material. And so we selected 11 tunes from that batch and released them on Life. And we have another 7 or 8 in the can. And the decision was for those songs was not made on any superiority of those songs to the others. They all are absolutely the most magnificent sounding tracks that I've ever done, and the musicianship and the band is just incredible, and the songs. But these were the 11 that fit the best together and had the vibe together on an album.
Well, when you record, do you record live? Was that the problem? Is that you're all in the room together?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was what was the problem, and so we got to where they were allowed to have the engineer was allowed 2 people on the floor at the same time, and so we'd get the bassist and the drummer on the floor, and I was recording tracks and demos in my studio in Tennessee, and shipping, sending them up there, and part of the illusion that we wanted to create, and it is an illusion that, but I defy anyone to listen to this album and say it's a Pro Tools record, or it's where people are all recording with headphones in their basement. It sounds so live, and we did that. We purposely would reamp things in the room in Canada, in the studio in Canada, and mic the room so that it has the effect of everybody playing in a room together, because that's a thing that you hear on all those old records is bleed from one microphone to the other, because it's 5, 6, 7 people that are cutting on the floor at the same time.
Right.
And you can't, digital recording has sterilized that to the point of, where you can tell that none of these people ever even saw one another when you're listening to an album. And so we hope that effect comes through, and I know it does, because I'm listening to it, trying to pick out some point where it doesn't sound live, and I can't do it. It sounds like the band is on the floor sweating and laughing and grooving and just making great music.
So do you make your living touring and playing live primarily? Is that how you do it?
Yes, and have. It's been my only job for this is my 41st year since 1983. I told my wife the other day, we've got enough money now to last us the rest of our lives, unless we want to buy something. So, we're set. And what a wonderful blessing and gift from God to be able to do what you love to do, and like I said, I've been immersed in and in love with music since I was old enough. I was doing my first little shows for my mother and dad in pajamas that had feet in them. You remember those that zipped up and they had little feet in the bottom? Yeah.
We call them onesies.
Pair of those now.
We call them onesies.
Yeah. I need to get a pair of those in the 42 long. I wonder if I could find. Drive around in my Mark III.
There you go.
Continental in onesies with lightning bolts all over them. But I would do little shows where I would come out and I would sing songs that I heard on their record player, and it was stuff like One for My Baby and One for the Road by Frank Sinatra, or my favorite song, my mom says, was Dean Martin's Standing on the Corner Watching All the Girls Go By.
Oh, okay.
And she says that I would just emulate, and both of those songs, by the way, were recorded at United Western on the gear that my album is. And I would sing every little slur and drunken little nuance and stuff of Dean Martin, and I'm 3 years old, and so it's been a lifetime love affair that I have with music, and that was kind of the basis for the title of the album being Life, because I've literally been making it it's been in the making my whole life. It's just, we're so excited that it's finally out. After all these years.
You and I are the exact same age. I was born in '62 as well, and when you were,
yeah, that's right, I remember that.
Yeah, when you were talking about Dean Martin, one of the ones that I used to like was watching his show.
The great variety show.
The variety show, and
Absolutely.
when he had the Mills Brothers on, that was always a great one for me.
Yeah.
I love
because he adored Frank Mills.
Yeah.
He said that everybody. I saw him in an interview. He said that folks would assume that he was emulating Bing Crosby. Because all the crooners, that followed Bing were like, so be boo be boo be boo,
yeah,
doobie doobie, all that stuff they assume. But Dean Martin said, I wasn't. I mean, Bing was great, but I wanted to be Frank Mills of the Mills Brothers, So when he had the Mills Brothers on, he was like, it was a master class for him. Those were his heroes.
Well, you could tell he was so happy.
We don't do a Mills Brothers. Oh yeah, and he. Those shows are great. I've got all of them on DVD. We even cover an Ink Spots song on my album on Life. It's such a eclectic. We do the Ink Spots ode to my favorite drug, coffee. We do Java Jive on the record.
I know that song. Okay.
Yeah, it's very eclectic. This record has, such an amalgam of styles and genres, and which is my nature anyway. And this is my 8th album, and all of my records have differing, varying degrees of eclecticism on them. We do rock and roll, we do blues, we do soul, but this one is really takes that up a notch. And life, though, is like that. It's no one's life is a straight line, or has one is hot or cold all the time, or one style or one way or one theme. And this record has singer-songwriter stuff. It has country stuff. It has folk. We have a folk ballad, a political ballad on there, social, kind of a protest song, I guess, of sorts. There's the title cut "Life," which is a cover of an Elvis song from the '70s, and it's a gospel song in the sense that it tells the greatest story ever told, and we cut it with an orchestra and strings, full orchestra, and never done anything like that before either. So it's, variety is the spice of life, and we sure have more variety on this record than any that I've ever done.
So these
before,
are all covers, or are there
no
original songs on here?
There's about half and half. I think, let's see, of 11 songs, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 originals. So it's about almost half.
All right. I'm just looking at the playlist here. Lorraine, I'm thinking of the one of Nat King Cole, but that's Sweet Lorraine.
Oh, right, Sweet Lorraine.
Yeah.
How I Married Sweet Lorraine.
Yeah, great song.
Quick story about Lorraine. My Lorraine, the one on the record, is a song I wrote as an homage to Little Richard, who was one of my heroes, rock and roll heroes. Little Richard's road band in the 50s were the Upsetters. And I named my band after his. My band has been my whole life, Lightnin, Charlie, and the Upsetters. Well, the Upsetters were Richard's road band, who were had the name of being just the most wicked road rock and roll, and they were known as the first band to put the funk in the backbeat of rock and roll. And Grady Gaines, and Richard recorded at Specialty in the 50s, as did Fats Domino most famously, and Lloyd Price and people like that, and they used the same band. It was Dave Bartholomew's band at Specialty in New Orleans, with Red Tyler and Lee Allen on sax, and a great, just an iconic, historically great band. And so like all of Fats Domino's sides, for example, have the same band as all of Little Richard's sides. So the same guys are playing in the same studio. They're cutting, Ain't That a Shame and Blueberry Hill as they're doing Long Tall Sally and Lucille.
Oh, okay.
But Richard recorded only 2 songs in his specialty catalog with his road band, and it worked out that they had come off the road or something, and they came in to do 2 songs, Ooh My Soul and Keep a Knockin'. And if you want to listen, or any of the listeners want to listen to those 2 songs in comparison to Richard's other catalog of Rip It Up and Good Golly Miss Molly, and you can hear a difference in those two sides, Ooh My Soul and Keep a Knockin'. The band sounds like just a Mack truck. You hear just a heavier kind of driving. So the Upsetters, I was always in love with Little Richard, and so I wanted to do a song that was kind of an homage to him, with horns playing a that kind of Good Golly Miss Molly rhythm. And so we recorded this thing. It came out beautifully. My Aunt Jeanette, I think we talked about my mother's baby sister on our last podcast, but my aunt knew Elvis and Elvis's family, and used to go on trips from Greenville, Tennessee to Memphis in the late 50s and early 60s, and stay at Graceland with Elvis's aunt and uncle, and Elvis when he was in town, and her name, Elvis's aunt, that was friends with my aunt, her name was Lorraine.
Oh, okay.
And
right. I think I do.
So
remember
and I always
this
thought it was a
story, yeah.
lyrical name, Lorraine always sounded like a song to me.
Well, it's funny, and you also mentioned You Keep a Knockin', and that always reminds me of Christine from the movie, because they use that song. And so we've brought this full circle with old vintage cars,
and that's a great
music.
Yes, and with cars and rock and roll, which were inseparable.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Just last week I was on television on one of those daytime shows, and I played Lorraine live on the show, and I get a letter a couple of days later, handwritten to me, in a shaky hand. It was obviously an older gentleman that had written this to me. And inside the letter, he said, he introduced himself, told me he had seen me on TV playing the song Lorraine. And he said, I've never heard that song before, but I was married to her for 52 years. And she left 15 years ago, and I'd love to know where I can get a copy of that song, and how you wrote it, and what inspired you, and so forth. And it's things like that for me, that when the music can touch somebody, through me in a way, in a manner such as that, it's just the greatest thing in the world for me. I took a CD, an album with Lorraine on it, and I was starting to put it in an envelope to address it to him, but he lived locally. So I was like, well, I've got 2 gigs today, but this first gig is right over near where he lives. So I just drove to his house, and I thought that since, if he looks out the window of his house and sees a Lincoln limo in the driveway with Lightnin' Charlie written down the side of it, and
he'll
looks
know
through
who's
his
there.
door and sees me, he'll know it's me and not a Jehovah's Witness or something.
Right.
And then open the door perhaps, and I could give him the CD and shake his hand and hope to ask him to see a picture of his late wife Lorraine, and he brought me in the house, and he cried, and he was apologizing, oh, I'm sorry, and he turned his back, and he was a gentleman about early mid 80s, and he was married for 52 years, 15 years ago, so he's got to be in his 80s. And he was apologizing for becoming emotional. I told him not to worry about it. That's the same thing I did when I read his letter. And I said, you asked me about the inspiration for Lorraine, and I don't know, but I could tell you that I met the reason I wrote Lorraine today when I got to meet you and see pictures of your, beautiful wife. And that's just the kind of stuff that that's why I play music, and that's what music is for, is to reach people and touch them and uplift them,
Wow, that is a great story. And I think on that, Charlie, we're going to have to wind it down because we've just about used up our time. So the new album is called Life. It's been released, right? Yes,
it's just been out a week, and It's available on all the streaming sites, and you can buy the hard copy from CD Baby or Amazon. For the streaming, for the people who want the digital copy, I encourage folks to go to my Bandcamp page, which is a streaming platform that's really, really great. You can download in any format you want. There's the lyrics to every song on the site. There's a backstory, kind of a mini blog on each song on the record and how it was recorded and how we came to write it and so forth. And the best part for me as the artist is Bandcamp gives 80% of the proceeds directly to the artist, which is good. About 10 million times what the Spotify's and iTunes and things. And it's a really, and it's, I think you can download the album for $10, and you can put more in if you like. You can tip me, and it's just a great site. But I think the singles are $2, I think, for a download, and so it's great that of the $2, I would get $1.60 or something. So
that's pretty
if you're
good.
wanting to download the record and really help Lightnin' Charlie and other artists, that's the place to do it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming
and
back
that
on
address,
the show. Go ahead.
Can I give? I'm sorry, Doug. The address on that Bandcamp is Lightnin' Charlie. That's one word: lightninCharlie.bandcamp.com.
Okay.
lightnincharlie.bandcamp.com.
We'll put that in the show notes as well. We'll put the link there.
Cool.
So people can find it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Charlie, thanks so much for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And best of luck with the new album.
Pleasure,
I hope it does well.
Thanks.
And just on a closing note, the Lincoln Continental sold for $45,000. So
45. See, we got to get together, Douglas. You and me, get one of them. Make sure there's a CD player in it, and we'll go and just drive around in our Ray-Bans and play our music and turn it up and pull the knobs off.
The last 5 minutes, I think,
and it's
just
a pleasure
really
talking to you.
Really
man.
Kicked up in the price, But that's typical of auctions. But anyways, Charlie. All right, take care. Nice talking to you.
All the best to you, Doug. Thank you.